Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for visiting. Another update on Uboat Sim. A little bit more work on the diesel rooms. First off, just want to make sure that you're aware that the game is available for free right now. It's on itch.io or uboatsim.com. They'll take you to this platform. It's very similar to Steam. Basically, has auto update functionality and all that fun stuff. And the game is completely free right now. All I ask is that you provide some feedback, whether you use itch or Facebook or just directly via the website. Just some feedback to help me along the way is all I ask for now. And so let's go ahead and start Uboat Sim, and I'll dive into some of the changes I've been working on for the diesel room specifically, and how that will tie into the other parts of the sim. Alright, you can see the patch notes here, so most of my work is occurring in the internal scene. That's where I'm focusing my time right now. The external scene is kind of a placeholder. So let's go over all of the changes, and you can see the diesel room is starting to feel cramped, which is exactly the goal here. And mostly it's interactive, right? So gauges, valves, everything. The goal is to be 100% interactive if possible. That way, each time you turn a valve, something actually happens somewhere, right? Alright, so first change, added a speaker. So when the captain talks and he needs to reach every room, this is where the sound will be coming from. Important, of course, if you've got the bulkhead doors locked. Secondly, I modified a lot of the verbiage for the valves. I want to make it clear to new players that may not have the time to sit down through a tutorial, or let's say the Kriegsmarine bootcamp I plan on adding, to give them a little bit more feedback on what all these things are. So you have the main intake trunk here, which is for the air circulation for the crew, and then you have the exhaust trunk. And all these pipes, if you were to follow them, you'll see that they run from room to room, and these blowers are responsible for circulating that air. That way, as the sailors are generating carbon and breathing, the rooms, even if the doors are closed, can stay relatively fresh when serviced. All these different valves allow you to open and close this. So if you have flooding in a compartment, let's say electric room is completely flooded, by closing these valves, you could theoretically still service if you have enough buoyancy, and still run the circulation system without having to worry about water coming into the compartment. Second, I extended the details for the main diesel intake trunk. So here's how the diesels actually got their fresh air for the intake. So you have a main valve here that if you forget to close when submerging, you're basically going to flood the diesels, and you have to use these taps here to basically remove the water from the cylinder heads. But we'll go into that later as that's simulated. So you have now different valves that you have to worry about as a diesel compartment crew member. Yes, it's tedious. There will be AI to help you, and if I decide to implement multiplayer, theoretically you could have 10, 12, 15 people all manning a single boat due to the amount of valves and gauges and everything that need to be maintained. But that is the goal of a true-to-life simulator, and of course AI will be there to automate tasks if you decide just to focus on one. Moving to the rear section, we can see that now you have a valve for the gravity tank you could turn on and off, and I've implemented a few helper methods to make turning things on and off easier. So for instance, for the clutch wheel, a single click will either engage or disengage it. It doesn't make sense to let you kind of engage the clutch halfway. It was actually pneumatic, and theoretically, if you go halfway and you stop, it should be pushed back to neutral position. Here's the clutch mechanism. Again, it's kind of a dirty model for now. I'm just putting it as a placeholder. The way this worked is there was a screw in the middle, and that physically moved the clutch lever with the friction plate against the base of the clutch on the diesel side or away. So I'm going to have animations that will show that working. And I've also added some of the exhaust trunk work here. So you can see the exhaust valve comes out from the diesel. it connects into this, and actually in real life they used water to cool the exhaust before it left the boat. And you had, of course, a valve you could turn on and off to disconnect it. So yet another valve you had to turn off before submerging, or you would get water inside the diesels and potentially flood the boat. So again, that's going to be simulated once all is said and done, and you'll be able to get real-time feedback on that. So if the diesels are filled with water, again, you have to go through a sequence to clear out the diesels of water, and hopefully you can start them up if you didn't cause too much damage. So those are some of the main additions I've added in the last few days. I want to talk a little bit about the clutch mechanism and starting the diesels. So the diesel engines had their clutch, which connected into a shaft, and that shaft connected them to the electric motors. The electric motors had their own clutch, which connected them to the propellers. So as a diesel operator, you would have to disengage the clutch to start the motor. But let's say in the game you forget to do that, and you leave the clutch connected to the electric motor. The simulation will take into account the moving mass and friction of all the components, and depending whether or not the starting PSI pressure is adequate, you may or may not be able to start the diesels. Same thing happens with the clutch going to the propellers. So now imagine you had everything engaged. The diesels, if you're trying to start them up and they have to spin the shaft, the electric motor, another shaft, and a propeller, they may not be able to start up. I don't yet know. I haven't been able to find any literature that talks about that, but I'm going to let the math and the simulation handle that aspect for me until I find someone that can tell me whether or not that's accurate. So for the electric engines, I spoke about this before. You can run them either in generator mode, so the diesel spins them and they create electricity for the batteries. You could run them in buffer and support mode. So what they would do is they would actually run alongside the diesels, and they would attempt to keep a constant RPM. So in bad weather, if the propellers were to actually exit the water and spin freely in the air, the diesels might over rev. So that's where the electric motors would turn into generator mode and would actually physically slow down the diesels by exerting friction and force. Or you could run one bank in generator mode, and that generator mode would fill the batteries and be able to feed electricity back to the other engine, and you could run that in electric mode only. So I mean, the configurations are going to be very open and allow you to run these in parallel, serial, buffer support, etc. So again, just like you're able to do on a U-boat, I want the simulator to be deep enough so you're able to decide exactly how you want to run all the machinery. You can imagine as wear and tear occurs on your boat, if a diesel becomes inoperative, you could theoretically use a single diesel in full buffer support mode and feed electricity to the other electric motor. So now you still have both propeller shafts spinning, one supported by electric and diesel, the other one electric only. So that way you could still skimp along and still move about just like they did in real life. The models I know are not 100% accurate, and let me show you what I'm using as a reference. Again, keeping in mind that all this is changing and I'm trying to increase accuracy over time. For now, I'm just kind of using them as placeholders. So I do use a lot of imagery videos, so I thank everybody on YouTube that has taken the time to post these, especially the 360s. You can see here, looking in the diesel compartment towards the rear of this particular video, you have the exhaust trunk with the service hatch, and then you have the mechanism where they use water to cool the exhaust. You have the exhaust valve, and then you have the clutch mechanism. So in game, all the components, the main components are there, and I need to modify the meshes to make them a little bit more accurate, but the functionality will be there. As far as the clutch mechanism goes, what we can see here is this is the idea of the clutch. It was physically, through a screw, moved closer to the diesel to engage and further to disengage. And that's what I'm going to be shown via animation here. Same idea, so you could get a feel for it. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoy these update videos, and you could get a feel for how this is coming along and how it's starting to feel. And again, please leave me feedback. That's why I do these. I'm hoping the community appreciates the work and effort. I'm trying to create a fully in-depth sim that will allow you to play with almost every gauge in Valve and get real-time feedback from a proper underlying simulation. Thanks for watching, and looking forward to the next video.